Okay, colleagues, greetings and welcome back. So today, hopefully a shorter video, I want to talk about essays and courseworks. So obviously I'm mostly talking to my students who are undergraduates, but I do want to address both essays and courseworks at the same time because I feel that there's a big overlap. Now, this is not going to be a formal rundown of the requirements. You can look at the syllabus for that. I want to give some methodological advice, broad methodological advice, if you want. So let me start somewhere. So first of all, how do you choose a topic? And again, I'm sorry for rushing, but I want to be brief. How do you choose a topic? Ideally, you should find a topic which you enjoy, which you find interesting, which you find meaningful. So much of university life, unfortunately, is a horrific waste of time. And I do not want our time together to be time wasted as well. And especially, writing essays and writing courseworks can be notoriously a hellish experience if you don't do it right. If you are unlucky or if you don't approach it the right way. So I encourage everybody to take the topic which they care about, which they find interesting, which they find meaningful. I hope that both within the courseworks and especially within the courses. I mean, philosophy, political philosophy, these are huge topics. I encourage you to branch out, maybe take something off into the left field. Now, also having said that, I do recognize that for most students, they will not have a topic that they have a particular burning interest, or maybe they're unsure. So this is where my second point comes in. Then you should take something that is useful, that is going to be useful to you in the future. So take something ideally which is both interesting and useful. But if not, then find what is useful. Now, how do we define what is useful? Now, again, mostly talking to my undergraduates in the International Relations Department, our main priority is preparation for University of London exams, right? So take something, both essays and courseworks, take something that is related to your future University of London exams. If you're writing with me, obviously we're talking about political philosophy, political theory, maybe international political theory. Maybe if you want to write about philosophy of science, there's, methodology of social sciences. This is also relevant for your exams. You can write about that on your exams. This is the topic. Now, another important question immediately is what should your focus be? Should it be wide or should it be narrow? And I think ideally the answer is your focus should be narrow as possible. You should have a narrow, well-defined research topic. But it's like sometimes it's appropriate to go wide, to like you're doing a survey, you're trying to understand, especially if you're writing a coursework in a second year as opposed to third year, it's appropriate to go wider. Or if you're writing, again, an essay in your first year, again, first, second, whatever, the idea is that in my courses, I ask students to do presentations, and I do hope that, again, you have a chance to present your ideas, and then your essay, in some sense, is a written down version of your presentation. And let's say you're presenting, if you try to present social contract theories and you want to talk about Hobbes and Locke and Rousseau at the same time, that's probably too wide. But if you want to take, Rousseau in general, that's okay. If you want to go narrower, let's say focus just on the second discourse or just on a particular, let's say, first half of the second discourse of Jean-Jacques Rousseau and have a particular well-defined question, that's always best, but you don't necessarily have to do it that way, okay? It's more important that the essay makes sense to you than you follow some strict rules. This is at least my approach, right? And this is in general my approach. Like when I was an undergraduate myself, sometimes I've had big problems writing essays. So imagine that, or courseworks. Imagine that you are writing for students who are going to come after you, or for your colleagues, or for students who are going to come after you, right? So especially talk about courseworks. Most people who are going to write with me in International Relations Department, I will urge people to write within the University of London course, which is International Political Theory. So basically, take this course, look at the exam questions, look at the questions in the syllabus, look at the bibliography in the syllabus, find a question, and then try to write about it as if you're writing to help your colleagues prepare for the exam, or as if you're writing to prepare, future students for the exam, right? Now, this is in terms of use. Of course, I keep talking about how, if you have a passion and if you have a question which is meaningful, that's always better. It's always better to take a question which is meaningful. But if you're not sure what the question is meaningful, then you can let the exams guide you. Okay? Ideally, you should find within the scope of the, I'm not saying exams questions, but like broadly speaking, like the course questions. Within the course questions, find something that you find meaningful at the same time. This is an ideal combination. Very importantly, please, I hope I don't have to say this, but please only use good English language, recent academic materials. So best publishing houses in our field of study tend to be Oxford University Press, Cambridge University Press. Others, of course, are possible. If you're doing something more philosophical, be sure to check out Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, sometimes also Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Cambridge Companions are always beautiful. Yeah. Could do a separate video about this. Now, when you're writing, now that you hopefully have chosen a topic and understand more or less what your focus is going to be, well, I mean, it's like sometimes you start writing and your topic evolves or your focus changes, and that's okay, but you have some preliminary idea before you begin, right? Now, it's very important, not necessarily the way you're going to produce the work, but in the final draft, in the final version, it's very important that you begin with a conclusion. Okay, the philosophy paper or a coursework is not a mystery novel. The conclusions should be upfront, right? And also something PhD students should avoid doing is you should not introduce, like, you're going to have a conclusion in the beginning, which is going to be a preview, and then you're going to have a mirror, which is going to be the conclusion at the end, right? And these are supposed to be very similar to one another. I don't want to say copy-paste, but very similar. They're supposed to be mirror images of each other. Something that you should never do is add new information in the conclusion, in the end of the essay, which is very often what students do, right? They write a work, but then they realize they wanted to say something else, or they have this grand bombastic conclusion, and instead of arguing and explaining their conclusion in the middle, in the body, they put it in the end. Don't do that, okay? The end is only supposed to be for the summary. Many reasons why, I suppose. One very important immediate reason is that, again, if you have a substantial conclusion, you want to say, Hobbes says life is only motion of limbs, therefore life is meaningless, or something like that. I don't know. Who knows, right? You should explain what you mean by that and why you think that or why you do not think. I mean, like, conclusion. Hobbes is Nietzsche before Nietzsche. That's a wonderful conclusion. But you gotta explain this in the body. Don't just drop it on the reader in the conclusion. So conclusion ideally should introduce no new information. Now, also, I should have begun with this. Let me even change the order in which it goes here. So your work is mostly going to be a summary. So if you're writing a bachelor's thesis, like if you're on your 4th year, of course, your work has to be more than a summary. It has to be proper research. But for vast majority of students, in your essays, in your courseworks, 2nd and even 3rd year courseworks, the bulk of your paper is going to be a summary of already existing opinion. So let's say if you're writing about Hobbes, there's a whole bunch of texts Hobbes' own text, like the Leviathan, and texts about Hobbes, like, let's say, chapters in books, or maybe books about Hobbes, right? By Gene Hampton, for example, that you should have read and should be familiar with, right? And so, in many ways, an essay is your attempt to, like, replay this. Think about me giving a lecture. Like, what is my lecture? It's mostly, to some extent, it is a structured summary in my own way, in my own words, of the ideas I have read elsewhere at the end of the day, or also of the ideas I have on my own. But again, like, even for me, I mean, I'm giving you a lecture on Hobbes, let's say, and the majority of the lecture is me explaining Hobbes, and then I'm gonna stick in a couple of my own ideas, like my own take, or what do I think about this, like, to what extent I agree. But again, like, the way it works, most of the time, the bulk of your essays, and this is actually also true on the exams. Most of the things you do on the exam is, you summarize what you have read. Now, in terms of, like, your own completely original text, no, all of your text should be original. Avoid plagiarism. Understand and avoid plagiarism, please. I don't even want to talk about plagiarism, okay? If you're watching this video, you're probably not at risk of plagiarizing, but still. So in terms of originality, right? So it's like, I'm summarizing somebody else's opinions, but how much should I write about myself? Well, the University of London usually recommends, for excellent students, something on the order of 15% of your own opinion. Could be slightly more. I could imagine an essay as high as maybe 30%. Could be maybe slightly less, especially if you are, first or second year and you're maybe just writing an essay. But of course, like, it's always ideal if in the presentation, in the essay, in the coursework, you show your own attitude, your own engagement with the material. So when I say originality, so for example, again, like, let's stick with the example of Hobbes, right? So for 85%, I am explaining Hobbes, I'm referring to existing studies, I'm referring to existing, data that support or does not support whatever conclusion I'm trying to give. And then 15% is I'm going to write from my own personal perspective, in my own voice, so to speak, right? So kind of critical assessment in the sense of, and I have this, arguments and counter arguments. So it's very important that excellent essays don't just explain the views, but you also understand what are the best views of the other on the other side. So you don't just explain Hobbes, but you also understand what are the biggest criticisms of Hobbes, and ideally, how would one defend Hobbes from these criticisms, and somehow, put all these things together, and then you draw your own conclusion, and you think that the criticisms outweigh the counter criticisms, or these criticisms are not important, but these ones are crucial. Like, make your own judgment, make your own assessment. This is broadly speaking what these 15% refer to. Okay, and potentially the last thing I want to talk about is writing guides. Should you read writing guides? There's plenty. They look up in Teams if you want this. They're always in Teams. With whatever thing you're doing with me, there's a Microsoft Teams group, and in that group, in the files, there will be writing guides, especially University of London writing guides. But also, I think this is the book. This is the book that the University of London at least used to recommend. I'm not sure if it's the best, but it used to be recommended, which obviously available in the library. So. But again, the question is, should you read writing guides? And it's like, if you decide, should you read Hobbes or should you read writing guides? I think you should probably read Hobbes. So like, in general, my approach is that it's fine if your essay or coursework is less polished, maybe even less structured, but has like deeper insight and more important ideas, right? So let's not turn this into a bureaucratic slog. And it's like, if you have to go over the word limit or under the word limit, but you feel it makes your essay better, do it. Okay, so because again, so much of academic work is just busy work from hell. Something that you do to kill time. It's like meaningless activity, and I do not want our time together to be like this. So this is kind of broadly speaking, I think, what I wanted to say. I suppose, again, it's like some of you students, some of you colleagues already have your passion. That's ideal. But many of you do not have a passion, or you are afraid or unsure how to express your passion. Then look at the University of London courses that we're taking together. Look at the questions that you need to prepare either way, right? Look at these topics and let them guide you. Let these questions, and I'm obviously more talking about Courseworks now, right? Something like that. That's the general idea. I hope this was clear. Let me stop here. If I missed something very important, I'll do a follow-up. And always, if you have questions, feel free to write to me. I try to respond quickly. The best way to talk to me is through Microsoft Teams these days. Anyway, colleagues, good luck with your essays. It's like, what is the purpose of education? It's the free development of each as a condition for the free development of all. It's a free and equal discussion in which we develop our rich and varied abilities. Writing essays should not be about suffering and torture. It should be about you, your mind, being pregnant with beautiful ideas and you wanting to express them on paper. Okay? Let's hope. Let's try. And again, it's like, I have this draft. The only way to improve is to keep writing drafts over and over and over again. And if you don't have time, maybe, you write an essay on this topic in this course, then in this course, and in that course, and then you write your coursework about it. It's like, keep at it and you'll get better. Anyway, I think that's it from me. Colleagues, stay safe, take care, and I will see you around.